Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the No Waffle, No Frills 10-minute true murder bedtime story. So, with that, let's crack on. Tonight's episode is the murder of Rachel Manning. On the evening of the 9th of December 2000, Barry White and his 19-year-old girlfriend Rachel Manning had been to a 70s night family party. Still in their fancy dress, they had left the party to go on to Chicago's nightclub in Milton Keynes Center. Nothing bad happened inside the club, but outside, Barry got into an altercation with a group of men. Barry walked off, telling Rachel to get a taxi home. He said he was going to a friend's to get a lift home, as he didn't want to go back and inflame the situation. Barry walked off to his friend Keith Hyatt's house. At 2:43 a.m, Rachel rang her friend to say she was very upset. Just after this, she rang Barry to say she was lost. Barry told her to go to Blockbuster's video store and he and Keith would pick her up in Keith's van. They searched all over for her, going back to the video store 3 times, and Barry is seen on CTV searching for her on foot. At 5 a.m, he told Keith to take him home as he had work in the morning. Barry went to work the next morning, and when he got home, he asked his mum if she had heard from Rachel. She hadn't. So he went to her work. She hadn't been in that day. From there, he went to see her flatmates in Wolverton and was told she hadn't been home. At this, he became very worried and decided to inform Rachel's mum, and they rang the police. On Tuesday the 11th of December, a greenskeeper at Woburn Golf Club was shocked to find a young woman's body in undergrowth and rang the police. Keith Hyatt that morning was driving down a road by the golf course. He stopped by the roadblock and thought he would ask what had happened, just in case it had anything to do with Rachel's disappearance. He told the young PC that his friend's girlfriend had gone missing 2 days before. The PC said he would go and fetch a detective. This he did, and straight away Keith was taken to Bletchley Police Station, where after being interviewed by 2 DCIs, Keith was arrested for the murder of Rachel. In Keith's own words, he said, "That was when my life imploded. I'd never even had a parking ticket up until then." Rachel had been strangled and savagely beaten. She had been hit 17 times with a steering wheel lock. She had a broken teeth, eye socket, jaw and cheek, and terrible injuries to her head. An expert said these injuries would only have been inflicted by someone who was close to Rachel and knew her well, most likely a boyfriend or husband. So they decided to arrest and charge Barry. They then released them on bail, but relentlessly interviewed them until they decided they had enough to take the pair to trial. Barry and Keith's trial started at Aylesbury Crown Court in July 2001. The charges being Barry murdered Rachel and Keith helped dispose of the body. The prosecution's case was this: Barry and Keith were in a homosexual relationship and Rachel had become an obstacle in this relationship. All this hinged on one entry in Keith's diary where he says he had seen Barry without his shirt and he had a nice body. The forensic case for the prosecution also hinged on the evidence of Professor Kenneth Pye, a forensic geologist, who said that particles of lighter flint on Rachel's skirt and Keith's van seat proved that Rachel had only been in Keith's van. That was the only place where she could have received those particles. The pair were convicted on this evidence, Barry receiving a life sentence for murder and Keith 5 years for helping dispose of the body. Not long after the trial, the BBC programme Rough Justice got involved, and they asked expert forensic scientist Dr. Peter Bull if he would review the evidence. He completely destroyed Dr. Pye's theories on the lighter flints. Also, the fact that there was neither Barry's or Keith's DNA on the murder weapon, and how, if Rachel was in Keith's van, there was no dog hairs on her. After the programme was aired, everybody, including fellow prisoners and warders, said to Barry, "You're innocent, you're going home." But in Barry's case, it would be another 3 years before Barry was released. In 2005, Keith Hyatt was released on parole with his conviction still standing. In 2007, Barry White appealed against his conviction and his sentence was quashed. But the prosecution ordered a retrial straight away. This, again, was a formality, and again his sentence was quashed. But all this meant was that there's still a killer on the streets. In May 2010, a woman approached a car thinking it was a taxi. Once inside, the driver tried to attack her, but she managed to fight him off and get out of the car. A passing lorry driver came to her aid. The car speeded off, and the lorry driver walked the young woman home. She didn't want to report the incident, but as the lorry driver is walking back, he spots the car again. He jots down the registration number and makes the decision to ring the police. A crucial decision. The police traced the registration number and they found it belonged to a 41-year-old married waiter with 5 children called Shahidul Ahmed. Being a sexual attack, he had to give his DNA. This was put through the database, which had a hit: the Rachel Manning murder scene. Posing as a taxi driver, Ahmed had picked up Rachel, drove her to Woburn Green Golf Club, strangled her, then beat her savagely. His DNA and one of his hairs was found on the steering lock. Ahmed was found guilty and received a life sentence. Subsequently, Barry and Keith received substantial damages. After Ahmed's trial, Rachel's mum released a statement thanking many people, including the police, the person who found Rachel's body, and the lorry driver who brought Ahmed to justice, but added, "We believe Rachel would be with us today if she had not been abandoned by her boyfriend the night she was attacked, killed, and brutally battered, and we cannot ever forgive that." Well, what do you think of that then? Hope you all enjoyed it, and hope you will be with me again in a couple of weeks' time for the next episode. Please stay safe, don't have nightmares, and sleep well. Good night.